Good afternoon, I'm Dilek Tunan. You're watching AnewZ. Let's see the headlines. US President Donald Trump selects a design for the $175 billion Golden Dome missile defense system. Top finance officials from G7 countries begin a three-day summit in BANFF to discuss global economy and Ukraine reconstruction. European Union announces the lifting of all economic sanctions on Syria. Damascus residents greet the decision with optimism. US President Donald Trump has officially approved the design of the Golden Dome system, aimed at protecting the country from next-generation air and missile threats. Valued at $175 billion, the project is expected to be fully operational within 3 years. Trump says the system will be the most powerful defense shield ever built.
US President Donald Trump unveiled the final design of the ambitious $175 billion Golden Dome missile defense system, a strategic initiative intended to shield the nation from evolving threats posed by China and Russia.
This design for the Golden Dome will integrate with our existing defense capabilities and should be fully operational before the end of my term. So we'll have it done in about 3 years. Once fully constructed, the Golden Dome will be capable of intercepting missiles even if they are launched from other sides of the world and even if they are launched from space. And we will have the best system ever built. As you know, we helped Israel with theirs, and it was very successful, and now we have technology that's even far advanced from that. It's amazing how easy this is.
The project is included in Trump's proposed One Big Beautiful Bill, which Congress has yet to approve.
The Golden Dome for America is a game changer.
I'm also pleased to report that the One Big Beautiful Bill will include $25 billion for the Golden Dome to help construction get underway. That's the initial sort of a down deposit. And we have probably, you're talking about, General, we're talking about $175 billion total cost of this when it's completed. This afternoon, I'm also announcing that I will appoint, very importantly, General Gutlein to lead the ambitious new effort as the direct reporting program manager for the Golden Dome.
The Pentagon says full construction could take decades, with space components alone costing up to $542 billion over 20 years. The system aims to detect and destroy missiles at all stages, using hundreds of satellites. Trump says it can intercept missiles launched from anywhere, including space.
Very small expansion.
We say we will protect the homeland from cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, drones, whether they're conventional or nuclear.
Defense experts warn that US missile systems lag behind Russia and China's advanced weapons, with both nations targeting weaknesses in current defenses, according to the Defense Intelligence Agency.
Canada wants to be a part of it, which be, fairly small expansion, but we'll work with them on pricing. We'll be dealing with them on pricing. They know about it very much. They've asked to be a part of it, actually. They've asked us to be a part of it. I think it's something that is great if you can afford to do it.
Inspired by Israel's Iron Dome, the new Golden Dome will be larger and more versatile, targeting hypersonic missiles and space-based threats with advanced technology.
We think it's going to be about a little bit less than 3 years, and we'll have a big phase-in very early. We're starting immediately with $25 billion. It'll cost about $175 billion completed, but we think in 2.5 to 3 years.
SpaceX, led by Elon Musk, is set to be a main contractor, with firms like Palantir and AnewZ also involved. However, Democrats have expressed concerns over transparency.
SpaceX, led by Elon Musk, has successfully launched a new batch of Starling satellites into orbit on Tuesday. The Falcon 9 rocket lifted off from the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida, carrying 23 Starling satellites into orbit. Since 2019, SpaceX has sent about 8,000 Starling satellites into space. Now it provides fast internet to more than 5 million people in 125 countries. This has changed the global satellite market, and many military and intelligence groups use Starlink for secure communication. SpaceX now launches satellites faster, with at least one mission every week. Each launch sends about 20 to 25 satellites to space to improve network speed and replace old satellites. Finance ministers from the G7 nations are meeting in BANFF, Alberta in Canada for talks on trade, global growth and Ukraine.
Finance ministers from the G7 nations have gathered in Banff, Canada for a three-day summit. The meetings will focus on trade tensions, China's growing export surge, and financial support for Ukraine. Canadian Minister François-Philippe Champagne said Ukraine's reconstruction could cost more than $500 billion and confirmed Canada will continue backing Kiev.
Seeing the report from the IMF that the reconstruction effort in Ukraine is going to be north of $500 billion US dollar over a decade in order to rebuild this country, build back better together. And today was a moment that we could share. There's a lot that we could do together. We talked about energy infrastructure. We talked about infrastructure like roads, ports, railway. We talked about defense technologies. We talked about energy.
Ukrainian Finance Minister Sergei Marchenko, attending despite Ukraine not being a G7 member, urged stronger sanctions on Russia. He also called for the lowering of the $60 per barrel G7 price cap on Russian oil. The summit takes place under a changed political landscape. Since returning to office in January, US President Donald Trump has threatened to cut Ukraine aid and pressed Kiev into a critical minerals deal. His new tariff policy has triggered unease among G7 allies, with countries such as Japan, Germany and Italy facing possible tariff hikes by July. US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is also pushing allies to take a tougher stance on China's export-driven economic model, which Washington blames for overcapacity and market disruption. The talks will also cover artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and ways to crack down low-value shipments from China, which the US links to fentanyl smuggling. These meetings set the stage for next month's G7 Leaders Summit in Kananaskis.
Even if Moscow and Kiev agree in principle to a ceasefire, implementation will pose a number of complications and mutual accusations. With no durable peace in sight, the war may be slowly transitioning towards a new normal, defined by intermittent truces and sustained de-escalation efforts. Joining us now from Kiev is retired Colonel Andrew Ordanovich to discuss further. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me today.
Now, how difficult will it be to enforce an effective ceasefire on the ground?
Actually, the very short answer is could be very simple, very easy. If Russian president would decide to withdraw all kind of troops what they have on the Ukrainian soil back to Russia, after that we will have 100% of very effective, comprehensive and justified ceasefire. But talking honestly, it is from another hand, it's really a very much complicated issue. If take purely academic points of view, I would mention it that first and foremost, reaching the ceasefire agreement is very much a complex issue. First of all, its context could be very much specific. In order to reach political objectives, also it's very difficult to agree to the terms and conditions. As for today, the Russian terms and conditions for reaching the ceasefire is very much tough to Ukrainian side and probably will never accept it. First of all, a recognition of all occupied temporary territories of Ukraine. Also, the requesting Ukraine to withdraw from the NATO aspiration, stay as a neutral status, as well as a request to Western society or Western politicians to lift a sanction. Ukraine is staying in this regard on a couple positions. First of all, we are rejecting territorial concession. We are insisting to have finally NATO membership, and as well as to restore our sovereignty, because even our national rights to decide which way we are going to select for the defense and security right now is problematic.
Okay, and among the technical elements, line of separation, buffer zone, exclusion zone, verification mechanism, which is most likely to emerge as the first stumbling block?
I believe it, first of all, it should be a political will as well as trust between sides. Political will needed from the politician to have a real ceasefire, because between a ceasefire and real truce, it could take a lot of time. First of all and foremost, this ceasefire agreement and implementation could be phase constructed. Second one, it would be decision to involvement of a third party for monitoring, or maybe some kind of forces which would help us to stabilize one or another situation. And thirdly, the area which are very much affected of the war of aggression Russia against Ukraine could be a provision of some aid, particularly humanitarian aid. It's right now, as I see, we do not have any trust between sides, as well as there are no political will at all on the Russian side.
Okay, and lastly, what deterrence mechanisms might prove most effective?
I believe that you will talk about the ceasefire. There is some military provision of it. First of all, it is the ceasefire of hostilities and based on political will. Second, it is a plan for make withdrawal of troops to create some buffer zone. Second, it should be applied specifically in Ukrainian terms, non-fly zone on the territory which are not affected, not to allow use of missiles, as well as long-range UAVs. And some kind of a good mood to the ceasefire, it would be a decision to do a prisoner war exchange, let's say all to all.
Okay, Mr. Ordanovic, thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Now, European Union announces the lifting of all economic sanctions on Syria. This move aims to support the country's recovery following the ousting of President Bashar al-Assad in December 2024.
The European Union announced the lifting of all economic sanctions on Syria. EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas emphasised that this decision aims to support Syria's economic recovery and promote stability in the region. However, sanctions related to the Assad regime and human rights violations remain in place.
On Syria, ministers agreed to lift all economic sanctions while maintaining those related to Assad regime and human rights violations. This decision is reversible and conditional also on progress. There can be no peace without the path to economic recovery, and we all need a stable Syria. Is everything really ideal there? No, it is not. It's very clear, but I think we need to give the Syrian people a chance.
Syrians in Damascus expressed optimism after European Union foreign ministers' statement about Syria. Residents called EU's decision an excellent step.
The lifting of sanctions by anyone in the world, whether Europe, America or any other state, is for the benefit of the Syrian Arab citizen. And of course we get optimistic by this. By God's will, the prosperity will begin in a short period of time.
It is an excellent step. In my opinion, thanks to Mr. Ahmed al-Shara, the President, and his team for the speed of the steps they made. In my opinion, the sanctions were against the Syrian people, and thank God, this is an excellent step for the people to see a big improvement and difference.
يلاقي التحسن الكبير.
The European Union's policy shift comes after President Donald Trump said last week he would order the lifting of US sanctions on Syria. The bloc has already eased sanctions related to energy, transport and reconstruction, as well as associated financial transactions. But some capitals have argued that the measures were insufficient to help support Syria's political transition and economic recovery.
Joining us now from Antalya is Mr. Vakas Dantikin. He's a senior correspondent of AnewZ Agency. Thanks for joining the program today. Now, following President Trump's earlier announcement, the EU has now moved to lift economic sanctions on Syria. How soon will the process take effect?
Long time before it takes effect, and there are a few reasons to take into consideration with EU and US move in favor of Syria in the past few weeks. This EU decision has been followed by a US administration decision to lift sanctions on Syria just a week earlier. So it is pretty much a Western stance in favor of Syria. And also, I think, first off, it is including energy, transport, and banking industries initially. And there are still some restrictive measures, not completely lifted. And I think EU wants to use these restrictive measures as a leverage against the Syrian administration in the future if things are not to their taste in the coming days, in the coming months. And the timing of this sanctions, lifting of sanctions is very important. I think it has a lot to do with Israel's ongoing offensive in Gaza and constant Israeli violations of Syrian territory. And we know the tensions between Trump administration and Netanyahu government, and also between the European governments and Israel in the past few days, especially after Israel has renewed its offensive on Gaza. So instead of confronting Israel directly, I think these countries are taking decisions that are not to Israel's interests. Israel does not want a stable Syria. It wants a confederation in Syria. But these moves are going to strengthen Syria's sovereignty and territorial integrity. And the Syrian administration will establish itself stronger at home and abroad. And also, the Syrians are celebrating at the moment, of course, because a stable Syria will be able to bring its diaspora citizens from abroad. And there are millions of educated and well-off Syrians living in the US, in Europe, in other countries. And right now, the only reason they are not able to get back to their country is the instability and these sanctions and the inability of the government to do anything. But with the removing of the sanctions, the Syrians will be able to come and work in the public institutions as doctors, as nurses, and also will be employed in the rebuilding of Syria, which is very important. And why Europe is doing this also, I think, has a lot to do with the Al-Hol camp in Syria, where ISIS members and their families are kept, and also Al-Roj camp. There are thousands of Europeans in those camps who are ISIS members. They want to go back to their countries, origin countries, but European countries don't accept them, don't want them back. And maybe it is part of this deal. Maybe they ask the Syrian administration to take care of those camps, and in return for not sending back to or deporting them to European countries. There are a lot of litigation cases, there are a lot of legal cases in Europe by these ISIS families against their countries. So it is an interesting process that we need to take into consideration. So Europe might be using this as a leverage. You know, I'm removing the sanctions, and in return, you are going to be taking care of the Al-Hol camp. That might be one of the equations. And also, you know, as I said, supporting Syrian recovery is an indirect opposition to Israeli plans in the region. And I think Europe and the US are taking these bold decisions, also sending a message to the Israeli government saying, you know, we are not, on the same page with you in a lot of issues, and you gotta stop with your expansionist policies in the region against West Bank and other territories. And so basically, this is my opinion at this point.
Okay, and what are the key barriers to bringing Syria in from the cold?
I mean, right now Syria is on a right track. It is not picking up fight with any of its neighbors. It is just focused on its recovery. And they have strong help from Turkey, from the Turkish president. And the Turkish President Erdogan was raising this issue of lifting sanctions in every platform he appears, and also in every phone conversation with the European and other world leaders. So, and they also have support from certain Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia and Qatar in particular. And with their money and investment flowing to the country, with Turkey's support militarily, politically, I think it won't take a long time for Syria to recover, because Syrians are not your typical Arab nation. It has a lot of ethnic demographies, backgrounds. It is a very strong, vibrant community, and especially with the arrival of diaspora Syrians, I think it will be just a matter of time. We have a very full-fledged, independent Syrian government and Syrian nation.
Okay, Mr. Dantikin, thank you for your insights. Israel's military says it's expanding its ground operation against Hamas in Gaza. Military Chief Eyal Zamir says Israel will capture more territory and continue destroying what he called terrorist infrastructure. On Tuesday, Israeli airstrikes hit several areas across Gaza, including 2 homes and a school. Gaza health officials say at least 18 people were killed, many of them women and children. Israel did not comment on the specific strikes, but has repeatedly claimed Hamas hides weapons and fighters among civilians, a charge Hamas denies. Meanwhile, fresh explosions lit up Gaza's skyline early Wednesday as global calls grow for more aid to reach civilians. Yemen's Houthis groups say they will enforce a naval blockade of the Israeli port of Haifa in response to Israel's ongoing assault on Gaza. The port of Haifa is the largest of Israel's 3 major international seaports, with nearly 20 million tons of cargo passing through each year. Houthi spokesperson Yahya Saree warned shipping companies to steer clear of the port, now listed as a target. The Houthis' declaration follows a pattern of escalating threats between the Iran-backed group and Israel. Flash floods have hit southeast Australia after heavy rains lashed parts of New South Wales. Rural towns are cut off, residents have been stranded, and record-breaking river levels have prompted emergency evacuations.
Heavy rain has swept through southeast Australia on Wednesday, causing flash floods that have cut off rural towns and stranded residents, particularly in New South Wales. Emergency services conducted rescues by boat in the area, where the Manning River surged to a record of 6.4 meters, surpassing the previous high set in 1929. Areas such as the Hunter and mid-North Coast regions were severely hit, where some locations received more than 4 months' worth of rain in just 24 hours. Emergency Services Minister Jihad Dib described the rainfall as enormous, and authorities have issued 13 emergency-level alerts.
We've got a situation here where the rain really has been falling quite heavily and quite hard, and it hasn't been moving away. Part of that is because the ground is so saturated. Another part is also because the rivers are swollen. We've been very clear in terms of giving information to communities and getting that information out quickly.
So far, no casualties have been reported. More than 280 people were evacuated from their homes, with rescue teams pulling residents from rising waters and rooftops. Evacuation centers have been set up across the affected regions. The Bureau of Meteorology warned some areas could see up to 300 millimeters of rain during Thursday, 3 times the monthly average for May. A fresh evacuation warning was issued for the residents in Red Bank as floodwaters continue to rise.
Now, a new report has found wildfires caused by climate change has pushed global forest loss to unprecedented levels. Let's take a look at the scale of the damage.
2024 was the year fire took over. A record-shattering 6.7 million hectares of tropical rainforest lost around the world, an 80% jump from the year before. Brazil, host of this year's UN Climate Change Conference, saw the worst of it. Droughts caused uncontrollable fires across the Amazon, reversing hard-won progress on deforestation. And in Bolivia, fires surged by 200%, driven by extreme heat and land clearing for farming. For the first time on record, fires, not agriculture or logging, were the leading cause of this loss, accounting for nearly half of all destruction. Experts from the World Resources Institute and the University of Maryland say their findings are unlike anything they've seen before. But it's not all bad news. Indigenous-led regions in Bolivia and policy shifts in Southeast Asia helped keep forests standing. Now all eyes turn to Brazilian Belém, where world leaders meet in November. Campaigners say the message is clear. Forest protection needs funding, and fast.
In the capital of Hungary, the summit of the Organisation of Turkish States kicks off. AnewZ has more from the venue.
The informal summit of the Organization of Turkish States here in Budapest is in full swing. As I believe you can see behind me, the heads of state are arriving for their meetings and gatherings. Just before this, we saw the meeting of the Council of Foreign Ministers of the ODS, and we heard some interesting numbers there. The General Secretary of the OTS has said that the global external trade turnover of OTS countries is around $850 billion, but he wants to make that even more and within the OTS. Then we heard the Hungarian Foreign Minister Peter Szijjártó thanking everyone and showing his appreciation that they came here to Hungary, which is hosting the first ever summit of the OTS in an observer state. Now, ahead of all of these today's events, we saw the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán yesterday receiving the heads of state of the OTS. That's how he met Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev. The two spoke on strengthening bilateral cooperation and ties. The two countries are strategic partners, and they took it a step further in 2023 when they signed the declaration on expanded strategic partnership. After all the meetings that took place, Orbán said that Azerbaijan was always there to help, and that a friend in need is a friend indeed. Aliyev in turn said that he congratulates Hungary on its independent policies. Now, all that is left today to see here is the meeting of the heads of state, and as we could hear the Secretary General of the OTS say, the next meeting, the next summit, the official summit, is to be held in Azerbaijan. For now, from Budapest, for AnewZ, AnewZ.
Yasin Husseinzadeh, who attacked Azerbaijan's embassy in Iran, was executed today in Tehran. The armed assault took place on the 27th of January in 2023. One embassy staff member was killed and 2 others were injured. It happened at around 8 a.m. local time when a man armed with a Kalashnikov rifle bypassed the embassy's guard post, entered the building and opened fire. Although embassy staff tried to stop the attacker, he managed to kill Orkan Askarov, the head of the embassy's security service, and injured 2 other employees. Following the incident, the embassy suspended its operations in Tehran. The diplomatic mission resumed activities in July last year. Iran has stressed the importance of stable and secure borders in the South Caucasus during a meeting with Armenia's defence minister in Tehran. Defence Minister Aziz Nasirzadeh called the Iran-Armenia border a historic link between the two nations and said it must not be altered. He underlined that preserving territorial integrity is a key pillar of Iran's regional policy. Nasirzadeh also described Armenia as a strategic neighbour in Iran's broader approach to the region. Armenia has reportedly signed major defence deals with India and France worth nearly $1.75 billion in total. The information comes from Russian and Indian sources, though Yerevan has not officially confirmed all the details.
Armenia has shifted its focus to defence and military equipment produced in India and France. According to a report by the Russian International Affairs Council, Armenia has signed defence contracts with India and France worth nearly $1.75 billion. The report says that between 2022 and 2023, Armenia agreed to buy weapons from India for around $1.5 billion. The contracts cover a wide range of military equipment, including rocket systems, anti-tank missiles, artillery, and air defence systems. Indian media have occasionally reported on these contracts, but Armenia has not officially confirmed them. Data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute shows that between 2022 and 2024, 43% of Armenia's arms imports originated from India. This marks a sharp contrast with the 2016 to 2018 period, during which Indian arms exports to Armenia were negligible. Furthermore, in 2023 and 2024, Armenia signed separate contracts with France worth about $250 million. Under the 2023 agreements, France delivered 24 Bastion armoured vehicles and a shipment of night vision equipment made by defence firm Safran. Armenia also finalised deals for Groundmaster 200 radars and Mistral 3 air defence systems. In 2024, additional contracts were signed for Caesar self-propelled howitzers and various models of assault rifles from French manufacturer PGM. The howitzer deal was publicly confirmed by French Defence Minister Sébastien Lecornu. Changes in Armenia's defence procurements policy come at the expense of Russia, previously the key supplier of military hardware to Armenia. Russia's continued struggle with sanctions and the protracted conflict in Ukraine created an opportunity for India and France to expand into the market traditionally dominated by Russia.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is in Armenia for a two-day visit, his first in nearly 3 years. He's already met with Armenian Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan and is set to hold talks with the country's President and Prime Minister. During his meeting with Mirzoyan, Lavrov stressed Russia's goal to fully normalise ties between Armenia and Azerbaijan, supporting border talks and regional cooperation. The visit comes as relations between Moscow and Yerevan grow increasingly strained. Protest signs lined Lavrov's route and critical banners appeared in the capital ahead of his arrival. Lavrov's visit also coincides with a regional meeting of European Union ambassadors, where Mirzoyan again signalled a shift in Armenia's foreign policy, highlighting a 95% cut in Russian arms imports and the removal of Russian border guards from key sites. Turkey's Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan will pay a working visit to Russia from the 25th to the 27th of May. That's according to Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Zakharova. She added that Fidan is scheduled to hold talks with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. The discussions will focus on key issues such as Syria, Libya, the South Caucasus and the Black Sea region. They are also expected to discuss prospects for trade and economic cooperation, whilst reviewing plans for upcoming high-level bilateral meetings. Uzbekistan has announced new visa policies to boost tourism, aiming to attract 15.8 million foreign visitors and generate $4 billion in tourism exports by the end of 2025. Starting from the 1st of June, citizens of Bahrain, Kuwait and Oman will be granted visa-free entry for up to 30 days. Additionally, plans are underway to allow citizens of Azerbaijan, Russia and Kazakhstan to enter using only their national ID cards or internal passports, including children under 16 with a kinder passport. These initiatives are part of a broader strategy to simplify travel and enhance tourism, business and humanitarian connections. The Aegean region continues to lead Turkey's renewable energy transformation. With nearly a third of the country's installed wind energy capacity, the region powers millions of households and is not just about clean energy, but also economic opportunity.
The Aegean region, known for its steady coastal winds and natural beauty, is now a powerhouse for Turkey's clean energy revolution. Accounting for 29% of the country's installed wind energy capacity, the region generates enough electricity to supply an average of 2.5 million households annually. Leading the charge is Izmir, with an installed capacity of 1,980 megawatts, making it the top city in the region for wind energy generation. According to the Turkish Wind Energy Association, Turkey's total wind energy capacity reached 13,800 megawatts in 2024.
Turkey's installed wind power capacity, which was just 19 megawatts in 2005, has now exceeded 13,000 megawatts, and approximately 12% of the country's electricity production comes from wind energy. Izmir is also a strong player in the wind energy industry. The production of wind energy equipment has created employment for 40,000 people, with 70% of the manufactured equipment being exported.
Turkey's wind journey began in 1988 with the commissioning of the country's first wind power plant in Çeşme, Izmir.
Turkey has immense renewable energy potential. Our wind and solar targets are ambitious, 120,000 megawatts by 2035, but achievable with the right policies and investments.
As Turkey pushes forward with its green energy goals, the Aegean region is growing that sustainable development and industrial growth can go hand in hand, powered by the wind.
And that's the world news for the hour. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to AnewZ.